Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a concept that is an absolute game changer when it comes to the daily grind of money management. We're talking about the $1,000 blueprint. Look, if you've ever felt totally overwhelmed by the mere idea of saving money, or if you feel like your paycheck literally vanishes into thin air the second it hits your bank account, well, you're not alone. But the source material we're looking at today completely demystifies that whole process. We're going to break down the mechanics, the psychology, and the exact steps you need to take to gain total control over your finances. And yes, this works even if you feel like you are starting from absolute zero right now. Let's get into it.
So, think saving your first $1,000 is impossible? Honestly, it is incredibly easy to feel that way. When you're stretching every single paycheck just to cover the bare basics, the idea of setting aside a big chunk of cash, it feels like pure fiction. You might be sitting there thinking you don't have a single extra dollar, let alone 1,000 of them. But what's so fascinating about this blueprint is how it hits that exact limiting belief right on the head. It reveals that the barrier holding you back isn't usually your income. Actually, more often than not, it's your system.
You know, there is a really profound psychological weight to this specific number, $1,000. It isn't just some random figure pulled out of a hat. Hitting this exact milestone completely shifts the way you handle money, basically because it physically insulates you from chaos. In fact, research consistently shows that a $1,000 buffer statistically covers the vast majority of common, everyday emergencies. We're talking about a sudden car repair, an unexpected medical bill, or, a broken washing machine. When you cross that specific threshold, a massive mental shift happens. You transition from someone who is just scraping by to someone who is actively building. You're proving to yourself that you can actually hold on to the wealth you generate, which is absolutely crucial because it sets up the ultimate foundation for literally everything else you'll ever do financially.
All right, let's jump into the first major phase. Section 1, track every single dollar. Step 1 to financial clarity.
Okay, tracking spending usually sounds like this lifelong, tedious burden, right? The very idea of logging every single coffee or trip to the grocery store sends most people running for the hills. But the brilliant part of this framework is step 2. You only need to do it for exactly 30 days. That's it. It's a finite, highly focused, and totally manageable exercise. Just think of it as a brief little experiment you're running on your own life. And the entire purpose of this 30-day experiment is step 3, to clearly identify the hidden leaks in your cash flow.
Now you've got to notice the stark difference here between intentional spending and wasted dollars. The research highlights a pretty startling reality about how money just slips through our fingers. See, it's usually not the big, planned purchases that drain a bank account. It's those invisible leaks. Take subscriptions, for example. Recent consumer behavior studies show that people routinely underestimate their monthly subscription spending by well over $100. They are essentially paying for what we call zombie subscriptions, streaming services, digital apps, or gym memberships that they completely forgot they even signed up for. When you actually track your spending for 30 days, you watch those unnecessary expenses totally separate themselves from your necessary ones. And eliminating that exact waste, that is exactly how you magically find the money to start saving.
Moving right along to the next core concept, Section 2, pay yourself first, the power of automation. By dedicating just a 10% slice to yourself first, you are fundamentally rewriting the rules of your budget. The rule is you need to save at least 10% of every single paycheck, and, this is the most important part, you must do it before you spend anything else. Just look at the breakdown here. 10% goes to paying yourself first, and the remaining 90% is left over for your living expenses. Visually, you can really see how relatively small that required initial savings actually is. You are still living off the vast majority of your income. But by taking your 10% right off the top, before you pay rent, before you buy groceries, before you go out for drinks, you guarantee that your savings is actually going to grow.
But here's the million-dollar question. How do we guarantee this happens every single time without fail? The answer is automation. It is a real game changer. The absolute key is to set up a system where that 10% moves into a savings account the exact same day your paycheck hits. Because let's be honest, decision fatigue is a very real thing. If you have to consciously choose to save money every single day, eventually your willpower is going to run out. By automating the whole shebang, you completely remove the temptation to spend it. If you don't see it sitting there in your checking account, you don't spend it. It really is that straightforward. You just sit back, relax, and let those small amounts naturally grow into massive results without ever having to make a daily stressful choice to save.
Which brings us to the final and most impactful part of the blueprint. Section 3, building financial discipline, the true payoff.
Take a second to consider this insight. Your first $1,000 isn't about becoming rich. Now, it is so incredibly easy to get caught up in all the math, the charts, and the literal dollar amounts. But the monetary value of $1,000, while yes, incredibly helpful when the check engine light suddenly turns on in your car, is actually secondary to what is fundamentally shifting inside your mind. Because this right here is the true goal of this entire blueprint. It's about proving to yourself that you can build financial discipline. You're moving from just being a passive passenger in your financial life to actively taking the wheel. You track the money, you cut the waste, you automated the system. You've proven that you are no longer just a victim of your financial circumstances, but the active architect of them. This isn't just about money anymore, it's about agency. When you build this kind of discipline, you gain a quiet, unshakable confidence. And that is exactly why the source material so powerfully urges you to start this today. Because your future self, the version of you who handles money with calm, effortless control, is going to seriously thank you for the system you set up right now.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final question to think about. Will you take the first step today to forge your financial discipline? The blueprint is entirely in your hands now. You know you only have to track for a short 30 days. You know you need to automatically save 10% off the top. The only thing left to do is to actually press the button and begin. Don't sit around waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect paycheck because it doesn't exist. Start today, plug those hidden leaks, automate your success, and just watch how quickly that first 1,000 changes absolutely everything. Thanks so much for joining me, and I honestly can't wait to see what you build.